morning, Fountain Street Church. We're glad that you're here, and whether you're here in person or you're online or you're YouTubing it today or tomorrow or someday this week, I wanted you to know that we think it's great to know that you have a place. You can join us any way that you'd like, whether you're here in person fully dressed, at home in your pajamas. It's your choice, and I just wanted to welcome each and every one of you here this morning. My name is Chip Wall. I'm your current governing board chair, and part of what Reverend Christopher's idea is having member involvement in our worship service is to help us to understand and to build community, putting names with faces and knowing a little bit about each other. So this morning, I was tasked with welcoming everyone. So to welcome you, I first looked up the word welcome to understand it, and it's defined as to greet someone or to accept something with pleasure and satisfaction. So a little bit about me. I'm a very happily married gay man who, with my husband John, has been attending Fountain Street Church since 2004. Part of what I love about Fountain Street is that there are people here who have found a home from a variety of backgrounds. I personally come from a United Methodist family, and we were very involved in our church. My eyes were opened when I was working really hard at a United Methodist campaign which was called Open Hearts, Open Minds, and Open Doors. I loved the message. That was until I understood that gay people were not a part of this openness that they were proclaiming. So I felt empty, betrayed, and sad. I didn't feel welcome as a gay man. My husband John was born into a good Polish Catholic family, and he wasn't going to have any part of any organized religion ever again. So we were left with a choice, and our choice was going to a church that preached something that we didn't believe in or felt uncomfortable about, or forging our own spiritual home. So on a bright, sunny Sunday morning in April of 2004, we wandered into Fountain Street Church. This is the place that I had heard that they had sacrificed live chickens on the altar. There are many other stories I heard that I'm not going to share because they're inappropriate, but I heard this was a really, really strange place to go. It sounded like something I wanted to be involved in. Thankfully, we found a totally different experience. There were no chickens involved. We were welcomed. In fact, I remember on that sunny Sunday morning, there was a man named Jack Petit, who's in the back of the room right now, who couldn't have been nicer with a big smile on his face and a robust welcome to Fountain Street. There are so many things that I love about this church. The music, the organ, which we just heard, the band, the preaching, the singing. But most importantly, what I love here is this community. It's a community that gives me joy. The people that I've come to know, the people that I love, and those that I appreciate. Our church family is very important to us, and like every other family on this planet Earth, there are good times, there are tough times, there's love, there's disagreements, there's anger, there's hands pounding on tables, and a lot of arguments, but even in tough times, I do take great solace in knowing that all of us are in this building to support each other in the same foundational values. COVID has changed all of this for us. It's disrupted our lives, made us rethink our priorities. John and I have found a new routine on Sunday mornings. Walking the dog with a Starbucks in hand has become our Sunday worship service. Fountain Street was YouTube later, sometimes that day, sometimes a day later, sometimes several days later. But let me say, walking in has never felt so good. Familiar faces, familiar eyes, hugs from a few, hearing the organ in person. Last week, hearing Reverend Christopher and Reverend Greta Joe speak live and in person, talking to the people in person, connecting, it felt so good. So my message to you is very simple this morning. Welcome. Those who are here in this beautiful, magnificent building which people before us have built, and we have to take heed in making sure that we continue in this beautiful building. Welcome to you at home if you're watching us right now, if you're watching us later, if you're watching in your PJs, no matter what you're doing, we welcome you. No matter what paths have led you to this service, what experience have led you in your past, it is our sincere hope that at Fountain Street you feel welcomed. Welcome and good morning.
Thank you, Chip. And welcome. What more can you say to that? I'm Reverend Christopher. I have the honor of serving as the acting senior minister for this season here at this beautiful Cathedral of Love and this Temple of Peace. And in addition to welcoming you, it's my job to also lift up and welcome the people who make this service possible today. Of course, we have Jonathan Tuuk on the organ, for whom I'm so grateful for the gift of your music. We also have our choir director and our choir, Austin, and our choir, who I'm so glad you're back this week. And of course, we have Robin Connell this week, also offering music, who we'll hear from in a little bit. And so it is so good and joyous to be with you all, no matter who you are, or what you look like, or what you have or you don't have, or the color of your skin, or what you believe or you don't believe in at all, or who you love or who you are loved by, because what is unifying is our shared commitment to love and justice and equity and inclusion. So in that spirit, let's prepare our hearts for worship as Kristen Loch leads us in the call to worship.
Good morning, Kristen Loch. I am so happy to be with all of you today. I mean, again, I said to you I would never not appreciate the beautiful space with all of you. I am again. This morning, I am honored to be reading this morning's call to worship. It's a poem, Invitation, by the late poet Mary Oliver. And I invite you to hear these words as we prepare for this time together. Oh, do you have the time to linger just a little while out of your busy and very important day for the goldfinches that have gathered in a field of thistles for a musical battle, to see who can sing the highest note or the lowest, or the most expressive of mirth or the most tender? Their strong, blunt beaks drink the air as they strive melodiously, not for your sake and not for mine, and not for the sake of winning, but for the sheer delight and gratitude. Believe us, they say. It is a serious thing just to be alive on this fresh morning in the broken world. I beg of you, do not walk by without pausing to attend to this ridiculous performance. It could mean something. It could mean everything. It could be what Rilke meant when he wrote, "You must change your life."
Good morning. Thank you, Robin. That song means so much to me. I can hear Gene Wilder singing that. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Kathleen Higgins, and this morning I will be sharing the Ancient Witness with you. The Ancient Witness comes to us as an adaptation from the Chinese philosopher and writer Lao Tzu. Hear what the ancient spirit is saying to us today. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. Don't wish things were different. That only creates sorrow. Go along. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. Be like a pebble carried effortlessly along the stream of life.
Good morning. My name is John Willette, and I will be reading The Contemporary Witness this morning. The Contemporary Witness comes to us from American screenwriter Eric Roth's screenplay for The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. Hear what the Contemporary Witness spirit is saying to us today. For what it's worth, it's never too late, or in my case, too early to be whoever you want to be. There's no time limit. Stop whenever you want. You can change or stay the same. There are no rules to this thing. We can make the best or the worst of it. I hope you make the best of it. And I hope you see things that startle you. I hope you feel things you've never felt before. I hope you meet people with a different point of view. I hope you live a life you are proud of. If you find that you're not, I hope you have the courage to start all over again.
there is a time and place for us somewhere. Thank you, Jonathan. Okay. I have a way of making myself nervous every time I get up here because I keep coming up with these things and I think, oh, they're either going to boo me off or something else. And this week I have a question for you. I have a question. You have to trust me. I'm going somewhere with this. Did you know that Fountain Street Church is actually still a very Baptist church? Does that get your attention? I'm going to let that sit there for a second, kind of uncomfortably, and sink in. And then I'll ask it again. Did you know that Fountain Street Church is still very much a very Baptist-y church? And since I'm already out on a limb, let me go further. Did you know that Fountain Street Church, the fiercely independent, radically progressive, and liberal bastion that we know it to be today, might actually be more Baptist-y than most Baptist churches? And I'm not talking about those stereotypical Southern Baptist churches that get all the airtime in our culture, but rather the historic kind. Those Baptist philosophies and ideologies that Fountain Street Baptist Church started out with 152 years ago. Remember that part of our story? I've been thinking a lot about our history lately because a couple weeks ago I asked you to as well. You might recall that 2 weeks ago I said that in the process of writing our next chapter, we needed to discern exactly what parts of our profound history we wanted to live out of and what pieces of our limitless future we wanted to live into. And as wild as it sounds, might I suggest that it's the Baptist pieces we should think about? Maybe I should explain myself, because the word Baptist for many of us is loaded and complex. But Baptist identity is actually rooted in 4 things, 4 fragile freedoms as they're described, 4 very distinct, powerful, and fragile freedoms. And I think we embody all of them today. The first one is what they call biblical freedom. And all that means is that every individual person should be able to read the sacred texts and interpret them exactly as they relate to their own lives. So in other words, Baptist roots propose that we are already enough as we are to encounter and appreciate these historic texts without prescribed dogma and orthodoxy. That's biblical freedom. The second one is this wild idea called religious freedom. Does that sound familiar? If you can believe it, religious freedom is actually a major hallmark of Baptist ideology. And it came from this radical young guy named Roger Williams, who was also the founder of Rhode Island and a staunch advocate of indigenous rights and religious freedom. It was this crazy idea that everyone should be able to worship or not as they felt led, without interference from the government. And believe it or not, even to this day, Baptist identity firmly places one of its 4 roots in the separation of church and state, though some of us could argue that's not always followed through. Okay, so you understand biblical freedom, and you understand religious freedom. But there's 2 more, and this is where I think things get really interesting for the 2021 version of the Fountain Street Church we know and love. The 3rd and 4th freedoms are church freedom and soul freedom. Church freedom and soul freedom. Church freedom simply means that individual churches are free to determine their membership, their leadership, their doctrine, and of course, their practice. Among Baptists, this is just called autonomy of the local church. And this, my friends, is why you can have these radically fundamentalist churches coexisting with these multicultural moderate churches, coexisting with people like me and the last church I served, which was called the Buddha Baptist Church by the locals. And this is why I think we're not that far off from our Baptist roots here at Fountain Street Church, because we love our autonomy and our independence. But I'm not even done yet, because I want to talk to you about the 4th freedom, the final freedom, soul freedom. Doesn't that sound good? Soul freedom. And it goes by the aliases as well as freedom of the soul and my personal favorite, soul liberty. Soul freedom is perhaps the most beautiful and complicated, desirable and dangerous of all of the four freedoms because it espouses that we are each accountable to the divine spirit individually without the imposition of creed, the control of clergy, or the influence of the government. Soul freedom advocates that the personal connection with the divine spirit is indispensable to a spiritual life, and it is unquestionably necessary for vibrant and vital churches. Soul freedom is this beautiful suggestion that inherent in human rights is the ability to connect with the divine spirit or not at all, no matter what that looks like for the individual. There is no minister, there is no government, there is no creed or doctrine that can define that. It is up to the individual to craft their own spiritual journey. And if that does not sound like Fountain Street Church, I don't know what would. These are remarkably beautiful and inspiring freedoms, especially this audacious idea of freedom of the soul, but they also stand at the intersection of risk and responsibility, which is why we have to call them fragile freedoms. They presume that the hard work of personal and communal discernment will get done with fair, equitable, and democratic process, and their survival depends on this work being done with love and compassion, respect and empathy. And when you look at it that way, if you really put yourselves at the 30,000-foot view and you look at the arc of this 152-year ministry, might I be so daring as to point out how pervasive the DNA of our Baptist ancestors is that runs through this community's veins today? I mean, have you read the vision statement? We strive to be a vibrant church community that challenges individuals to craft their own spiritual journeys and to engage in creative and responsive action in the world. Maybe this morning, I might even be so daring as to suggest that it's our roots in this idea of soul liberty that attracts so many people to this church in the first place. Honestly, I think that's what we're known for, this fierce autonomy of this church and this radical independence of the individual that so many people find liberation in here today. There's a beautiful children's story that illustrates soul freedom, and it's called A Stone, I knew I'd mess it up, Sat Still. And it's about a stone that sat where it sat, with the water and the grass and the dirt. And it was as it was in the world. To a field mouse seeking refuge in its shade, it was dark. But to the late-night owl, seeing its reflection in the moonlight, it was bright. To the seagull cracking shells against its surface, it was noisy and loud. But to the snake napping on its cool surface, it was quiet and peaceful. And it sat where it sat with the water and the grass and the dirt, and it was where it was in the world. To a tiny slug, its surface was rough, but to the curious porcupine sitting on its peak, it was smooth. To a frog, it was green. To the crab, it was red. To the beaver, it was purple. And to the fox, it was blue. To the giant moose that passed over it, it was a little pebble. But to the tiny ladybug, it was this massive mountain. For the raccoon, it was a feel, and for the wolf, it was a smell, and it sat where it sat, with the water and the grass and the dirt, and it was where it was in the world. And for many, it was wild, and for many, it was home. For the busy otter, it was a kitchen, but for the perched bobcat, it was a throne, and to the wild goose, it was a marker, but to the traveling ant, it was a maze. And it sat where it sat, with the water and the grass and the dirt, and it was where it was in the world. It would be the understatement of the century to say that this church is many things to many people. It would be an understatement as well to say that, like a stone sitting still, Fountain Street Church has become a beautifully complicated, inspiringly messy, and fascinatingly complex fixture in our world in which people of all stripes and colors, walks and talks project their own meaning onto our identity. Because in many ways, we all know that Fountain Street Church is everybody's church, as our former senior minister, Fred Wooden, and I used to say to each other. Because whether you love us or you hate us, you know exactly who we are, and you have an emotional connection to our presence here in West Michigan, and we represent something dramatically different to all of those people, even beyond these sacred walls. But even for those of us inside these walls, this place is many, many different things too. This place is sanctuary, and it is peace. It is wisdom, and it is inspiration. It is creativity, and it is creating. It is faith. It is hope. It is love. It is joy. It is loss and challenge, grief, and a lot of frustration. It is listening. It is learning. It is healing. It is changing and growing. It is metamorphosis and transformation. It is liberation, and it's a lot of responsibility. It is each of these things. It is all of these things, and it is more of these things precisely because of this radical Baptist idea of soul freedom that we still embrace here today at Fountain Street Church. So what is my point? Why am I standing up here debating how far or not far we are from our Baptist roots? Why? Probably because I am concerned that when we forget who we were in our past, we forget who we are in our presence, especially as we prepare to discuss who we want to be in our future. Probably because I come from a line of spiritual leaders who believe that you can leave your faith tradition like you can leave a hometown, but it is always going to be a part of who you are. And probably because I believe with every ounce of my being that we cannot live into the fullness of our potential if we don't recognize the tools and the resources and the gifts that have already been bestowed upon us. In this Baptist history, these 4 fragile freedoms are truly a gift. Friends, when I think about the piece of the history I want to carry into our future, it's this precious and wondrous and fragile freedom of being able to be a place for all people that I want to hold on to. This radical Baptist idea that we can continue to be a place that protects and defends the freedom of the soul, and a place where, regardless of who someone is, or where they are on life's journey, or who they love, or who they're loved by, or what they look like, or the color of their skin, or what they believe, or what they don't believe in at all, they, too, will have the same gift and privilege of this delicate freedom that we have all gratuitously received already. And I think, deep down inside, that we as a community, even those of you who might be out there thinking, what is he talking about with this Baptist stuff? Even you, I think you know we need to steward this gift. After all, it's in our church's blood and it runs through our veins. And now we have the opportunity to show up and be the stewards of this fragile freedom. We are quite literally being invited into a season of listening and appreciating, of respecting and of nurturing the freedom of one another's soul, and we are being invited to be practitioners of care for this sacred gift. Through the mobilization of governing board listening circles this October, we are being invited into restorative circles that will ask of us, what are your biggest hopes for Fountain Street Church in the next 5 years? And what do you fear might get in the way of this dream? What are your biggest hopes for Fountain Street Church in the next 5 years? And what do you fear might get in the way of this dream? Those are big questions. And be aware they're going to come with bigger answers. People are going to come to your circle with ideas and perspectives, hopes and dreams that are wildly different from yours, because this church is different for all of us. But the awkward reality of our Baptist past positions us to work together to protect this precious and fragile freedom of the soul, and our willingness to show up at the circle and embody this posture of grace is precisely how we're going to steward this precious gift and protect it for the future generations. And so this morning, it's my prayer that you won't take these listening circles for granted. It is my hope that you don't just think that they're a feedback session or a focus group. It is my prayer that you won't miss out on the opportunity to be a true fountain streeter who, like our spiritual ancestors that first nourished this church, has the ability and the capacity to hold and affirm one another's unique souls and the strength and the courage to affirm that their hopes and their dreams for this next generation are just as precious and valuable as your own. And it is my prayer that this can truly be a moment where, as crazy as it sounds, we can realize and honor our Baptist roots, where we can honor these 4 freedoms, and where we can honor one another by hearing their voices and hearing their perspectives. This is, after all, the mandate that has been handed down to us from those who first nourished this beloved church 152 years ago and entrusted us to carry it forward. So, sign up for a listening circle. Bring the whole of yourself to the table. Be prepared to speak and to listen. Be prepared to learn and to grow. And be prepared to be collectively transformed by the power of this unfolding moment in our church's story. Because we may not get another one like it. It's also fragile, after all. May it be so.
Good morning. Now that I've heard the homily, I think, I should have switched the pieces around. And I'd also, because there isn't a written program, maybe not everyone recognized the first piece I played. It's Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka, which I've never seen the movie, but anyway, I learned it recently, and when Reverend Christopher mentioned to me more or less the theme of today's service, I suggested that one, and yes. And then I suggested this one. It's a Stephen Sondheim piece, and I just learned it a couple days ago. And the title is the opening lyric. So I'll leave it as a surprise. Anyone can whistle, that's what they say, easy. Anyone can whistle, any old day, easy. It's all so simple. Relax, let go and fly. So someone tell me, why can't I? I can dance a tango, I can read Greek easy. I can slay a dragon any old week, easy. What's hard is simple, what's natural comes hard. Maybe if you show me how to let go, lower my guard, learn to be free. Maybe if you whistle for me. Maybe if you show me how to let go, lower my guard, learn to be free. Maybe if you whistle for me.
Thank you, Robin. Friends, we are dedicating time each week for meditation and prayer and our phones. And for some of us, it's awkward and uncomfortable. For others, it's familiar. And so we invite you to make whatever meaning you want out of this gift of space. And I said it last week, but in my last congregation, the Buddha Baptist congregation, we would always start every service and every meditation with, you have nowhere to be but here right now. And so I invite you into that posture. Find yourself comfortable in your seat. Free yourself. Free your body in this sacred space. Feel the presence of those around you and within you, those who have come before you. And breathe. We have been called to come to the stone that sits still. The stone that means so much for so many. What is this stone for you? What piece of its past and its future resonates at the deepest parts of your bones? Hold it in your hand, cradle it with your spirit, and let it comfort you. And breathe. God of many names and no names at all, source of limitless love, spirit of life that even time cannot contain, be present here today. Be present in this space. Fill this cathedral of love and this temple of peace and the homes and the cars and the places and the spaces in which we gather right now in this moment with your presence. Your presence of love and welcome and history and belonging. In the stillness of this moment and in the presence we share, we bring the whole of ourselves, and with that we bring the whole of our joys and the whole of our sorrows. This morning we do so aware of those in our community who also bring those things, including Jackie Pullman, who offers that her partner Matthew and a Fountain Streeter is recovering from surgery. And Barbara, who has a concern for former students who's in the children's hospital due to complications of COVID. A one who offers joy for being able to be around their community once again. I thought I would never be back in here. All of these things and the unspoken things that are simply written upon our hearts, we lift up this morning. And together we hold these joys and concerns, and the joys and concerns that have been left unsaid. And as we hold that as a community, I invite you to take but one more breath. Breathe in and breathe out. Amen. Blessed be. Thank you, choir. Friends, we are almost to the end of our shared time with one another, and we have a few housekeeping notes to share. The first of which is, please don't forget, there's a town hall right after this, and so it's literally the most Baptisty thing you could do, is come to a town hall, and if you'd like, share your feedback, or hear what the board has to say. We are also collecting offering in this season at the back of the church. You know there's probably a lot of things that are augmented, the lack of the order of worship, the lack of the offering plates being passed. We're just doing everything we can to minimize the encounters we have with one another as much as we miss them. So if you are so inclined to offer this embodied act of giving, that can be done at the back of the sanctuary at the end of the service for the offering. And as you know, half of it goes right out of these beautiful walls and half of it stays here to nurture this ministry forward. We also have an announcement from the community corners. You might remember last week, 3 of the 4 of them stood up here. There is a meeting this week, and I want to make sure I get this right. It is on Wednesday, September 29th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. And if you have any questions about it, you can connect with Reverend Greta or one of the community corner leaders. And I know I saw at least one of them out there. Oh, there we go. And so they are here if you'd like to connect with them in person. Okay. I should offer a programming note that this was not some kind of old-timey Baptist altar call. This was not some kind of conversion experience where I'm hoping you'll become a Baptist church, because, frankly, I would probably leave if you did. But I think it's important. I think it's an important moment and a defining moment before we start talking about our future to really dig into the past. And I think that the drag queen RuPaul said it best when they said that if you can't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love somebody else? So let's dig deep in these bones. Let's love those intimate parts of this beautiful ministry so that we can continue to love everybody else. And so my blessing for you this week, go from this space loved and liberated by who you and this church once were. Go from this space loved and liberated by who you and this church have become, and go from this space loved and liberated by who this church and who you are each becoming. Because I love you all, and I love this church. Go in peace.